to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
Welcome back for another brand new episode. My guest for this interview is Master Strong First Instructor and North American Director for Ground Force Method, Andrea U-Shi Chang. Andrea has specialized in movement training and kettlebell coaching since 2005. In 2009, she opened the Pacific Northwest's first kettlebell gym, Kettlebility. In 2016, Andrea was contacted by the Seattle Seahawks and hired to set up their functional movement screening program for their players. In addition to being a fantastic coach, Andrea is also an educator. She has co-authored the Ground Force Method Movement Instructor Manual, and as an early member of the instructor staff with Pavel Tsatsouline, Andrea became the editor of Pavel's online newsletter and author of several articles on Strong First and Dragon Door. In this interview, Andrea and I discuss several key topics, including some training recommendations for those pursuing the Strong First Level 2 Kettlebell certification, specifically focused around the half bodyweight military press, setting up classes and training for the Tactical Strength Challenge, as well as utilizing that event and the training around it to help build a community at your gym or training facility. And we spend a lot of time talking about Ground Force Method. What is it, how it can help you as an instructor and coach, and how Ground Force Method integrates seamlessly with functional movement systems, specifically the FMS screen and Strong First. Finally, please check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/Leo Training. Patreon is a platform that allows audience and community members to make a donation to their favorite podcast, blog, or other community or service-based program. So if you enjoy this content, I greatly appreciate it if you take a moment of your time, check out the page, and consider making a small donation to help the show continue to grow and flourish. And now, let's roll to a brand new interview with Andrea U-Shi Chang. I am very excited to welcome on Master Strong First Instructor and North American Director of Ground Force Method, Andrea U-Shi Chang. Andrea, welcome to the Leo Training Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on to the show after your extremely busy travel schedule.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be talking with you finally.
I know. We've started communication back October, September 2016.
I know, it's ridiculous.
You were putting the on the road, so traveling, constantly teaching, spreading the Strong First Ground Force Method curriculum worldwide.
Trying my best, and just enjoying every minute of it for sure.
Awesome. So as I always do, please take a couple minutes and introduce yourself. Let the audience know who you are, where you're located geographically, and kind of just your background and philosophy to training.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea, and I'm based in Seattle, Washington. I have a kettlebell studio called Kettlebility, and it is the first specialized only kettlebell studio, I think, in the Northwest for sure, and maybe arguably on the West Coast. And we started up the studio in 2009, and I started training here in the city in 2006 when I got my first kettlebell certification with Pavel Tsatsouline, our favorite guy.
Awesome. So cool. So what brought you to start training with kettlebells?
I'll try to make this long story short, but I was a college athlete, played soccer for University of Texas at Austin, and did a lot of USTA club tennis and all that kind of stuff, and had moved to Seattle and put on the Northwest poundage over time. I'm still somewhat athletic, but becoming sedentary in my job. I was selling real estate and had moved into this place in my life where even though I thought I was relatively active, obviously was not, and then was really enjoying cooking and eating. I'm half Chinese, so we love to eat. Everything's about food. So just sort of indulged over many years and ended up putting on quite a bit of weight over time, and had a car accident, got into some pain, ended up having a kid. And then one day just kind of woke up and went, what happened? Oh my goodness. And sort of reached out to a really good friend of mine and said, well, what do I do? And he is a childhood friend from New Mexico. One of our other master instructors, R. Wharton. And I said, what do I do? And he said, hey, you should, go look up this guy named Pavel Tsatsouline. He's got a book called Power to the People. And I had a shoulder injury that was keeping me from playing tennis. And he goes, do some of the stuff in there and see how it feels. And, oh, by the way, maybe you should count your calories. And so I started to do those two things. And my training partner and I started following Power to the People to the T. And we had been working out sort of old school, normal, big box gym style stuff. And it revolutionized what we were doing, and all of a sudden we're like breathing weird and wearing bare feet and doing stuff like this and just doing barbell stuff, just really following the Power to the People protocol. And I started losing weight like crazy. And I was also doing the other side of the spectrum, which is, watching calories and paying attention to things. And I lost, 20 pounds right off the bat. And I went home to visit my mom in Albuquerque. And at that time, Czar had a gym in his garage. Now he owns Firebells, which is this huge, 6,000, 7,000 square foot gym down there, and a bunch of strong first instructors. But he sort of introduced me to kettlebell swings and basically taught me swings, get-ups, cleans, snatches, windmill, squats, everything, basically the 7 or 8 basic movements that were basic at the time in 2 hours. And I just picked it up really fast and that was it. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
You were hooked.
And I was hooked. On the way home in the car, I called a kettlebell provider and purchased my first kettlebell, and off I went and came home and just never looked back. And in about 6 months, I lost 50 pounds. And so it was a life changer for me. And so for my birthday present, I went and got my first kettlebell certification. And it was in fall of 2006. And Pavel was leading this amazing group of instructors, and Brett Jones was my team leader, Team Jones. And
cool.
And it changed my life. So I came home to Seattle, and I realized that really what I had been looking for. I mean, I was selling real estate. I was doing really, really well. But it wasn't, I wasn't passionate about it. Mm-hmm. I was really good at it, loved to negotiate, but it wasn't sort of a heart, body, brain connection. And that weekend changed my life. And I found a community of people where everybody's trying to be better, trying to help other people be better, and very open-handed about it. Anybody who I asked who was in leadership or running the whole business, any of that kind of stuff, you would ask them a question, happy to answer questions, very open-handed. And I was like, wow, this is the community I want to be in. This is it. So I came back, and it started this process of eventually getting out of real estate, opening my own gym, training other people, and really just becoming a coach and an instructor and a student of strength and a practitioner of trying to just do better in my own body.
That's awesome. That's so cool. How long did it take you to transition from real estate into like coaching and training full time?
Well, interestingly enough, or I guess it was good for me. It wasn't good for everybody, but we had that huge housing boom and the big correction. And as the real estate market in Seattle was falling apart, my personal training business was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I went to this sort of a life transition. And at some point, I realized that this is really what I wanted to do. I was spending all this energy and time and money educating myself, going to every single workshop I could be, hounding at the time it was the RKC Dragon Door, and to like, can I be an assistant? Can I do this? Can I help out? What certs, any of that kind of stuff. And going to FMS stuff, getting involved in any other movement stuff that I could, that it seemed clear that that's the way I wanted to go. So as the real estate market was falling apart, I ended up opening up my gym. Oh, so it was sort of
wound down, the other one wound
yes,
naturally.
Absolutely. So it was fortuitous, but it worked out. It worked out really well.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's shift into our first topic. And so
sure.
One of the articles that you had authored that I saw on the Strong First website was around the Tactical Strength Challenge.
Yes.
And so one of the things I really liked about this was you kind of the voice sort of for the article is you approach it from two different angles, both the kind of the individual who's preparing for the Tactical Strength Challenge, but
right.
also from a standpoint of an instructor formulating classes that
right.
You can have groups come to and train together and kind of build that camaraderie and that community to prep for the Tactical Strength Challenge.
Right. I think the Tactical Strength Challenge that Strong First has is a pretty unique event, because it can be at the same time a very personal, best type of competition, where you have an individual who is going for their max deadlift and their sort of ballistic integrity and strength endurance with snatches, and then just absolute body weight ability by doing pull-ups. And so it is the unusual athlete who can do all of those three things really, really well. And so it can be an incredible competition for an individual. But on the other hand, there's not a lot of people who, guys that want to snatch the 32, or gals that want to snatch the 20, that's okay. We can still have a great time doing whatever you're able to do, even if you can't do all the events, to be able to get together as a community, to bolster each other, have a good time, work on something that has a payoff, meaning you get some data on where you're at. And then you get to try again to see if you can, whatever style of training you're doing helps you reach these goals, or you can train specifically for those goals. And so I think it's a unique opportunity for our system to showcase the things that we do well, is creating those foundational movement patterns that speak to being able to support anybody to do this type of thing, a max lift, strength endurance and body weight stuff. And it's just a really fun opportunity for instructors, on the other hand, to build a name for themselves, build community around things they're really excited and passionate about. And then if you're a gym owner, you can also build community around supporting the event and training specifically groups of people in your classes for that event. And really, like, for instance, in my studio, everything we do eventually feeds into the Tactical Strength Challenge. Not that everybody participates, but that how we train with Strong First principles. Mm-hmm. So no matter what we're doing, it's bolstering, supporting whatever you would need to train for that event anyways. So if somebody wants to join in and be a part of, getting the t-shirt, having fun at the event, lifting some stuff, encouraging everybody else on. It's a great way to foster community and really enjoy people's abilities wherever they're at. And what we've done as a studio is that foundational strength to be able to have anybody do the event is there. So that's pretty fun.
That's cool that the way that you've taught the curriculum at your facility allows any of your students to, if they so choose, obviously they have to start, focusing more on those three skills.
Absolutely.
But they have this very strong, deep foundation and platform.
Absolutely.
To like as a springboard, they can immediately start doing it.
Right. And the wonderful thing about Strong First training and the way we teach our principles is, we're practicing the skill of heavy loads with submax weights. I mean, even the heaviest kettlebell is not heavy enough for a relatively light female to deadlift. It's only 100 and some pounds, maybe even up to 120 pounds, right? That's really nothing with a barbell. And so if you are teaching people how to get into a good wedge position, have a really good deadlift position, which is going to feed into their swings and their ballistics, then all of a sudden when they get to a straight bar for the first time and start working on barbell deadlifts, it's like, oh, yeah. Oh, it's a little bit different, but pretty much it's the same. And they're able to lift their body weight or more right off the bat.
Right.
Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And that's also a really good feeling of accomplishment right there.
Yeah. And being strong, no matter where you are in life, whether you're a young athlete who's really working on all these things, or an athlete in your midlife where you're working on being able to keep the skills that you have and build endurance and sort of longevity for yourself, or you're an aging athlete who is recovering from something or really working on maintaining and resolving some issues that they've had. All this stuff speaks for being able to be stronger in your life, which is empowering.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you use the training inside your facility, the preparations for the Tactical Strength Challenge, to help to kind of build momentum and that camaraderie and help to create a community?
Well, it started from when I first started the studio. I went around and I asked a lot of people and got some feedback and read some things and about how to create an ethos or a mindset around what we were doing. And I might have been potentially ignorant because I didn't have a fitness background. I got an art degree, got into real estate, and then it fell into my lap. And so my first foray into strength training, fitness, instructor, all that kind of stuff, coaching came through Strong First, came through Pavel. And so I didn't have a lot of other stuff in my head. So when I went to start building the idea around my gym, a lot of people told me that specializing in kettlebells wasn't going to work. And especially specializing in hardstyle kettlebells wasn't going to work. And I just really believed that it fed life. It fed everything. And so I was like, well, I think I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to do it I'm going to do it Strong First way. Keep it simple, right? We're going to specialize in kettlebells. We're going to specialize in teaching people how to deadlift and swing and goblet squat and do Turkish Getups. And then if they learn any of that other stuff, that's just gravy. And so the skill practice and sort of my reputation in general, I think, is about the devotion to skilled practice and paying attention to the details. And so when you come into my studio, it's all about the skill and the integrity of the movement patterns. And we have a basic class, and you have to take a test, a skills test, to be able to earn the right to do more. And it's not about perfection. It's about being safe and effective.
Right.
So what happens is when the people come to our studio, and they're either in or they're out. It's either intriguing to them, or it feeds part of them, or it speaks to them, or they get the results they need, or they see the value in skilled movement patterns. And then it's really easy to build community around that, because it's not about throwing up in the corner and getting a beat down. Sure, that might happen. Hopefully not. But the idea is that if you keep working on skilled practice, you get a workout. Everybody does if you do kettlebells, if you do them right. But scaling it makes it possible for people of any level to bond around their abilities. And so, for instance, we have a class on Sunday that I just finished called Sunday Strength. And it's the closest thing my studio has to an open gym format. Everything else is sort of group classes or personal training, small groups. And the Sunday Strength class is you come in and everyone gets to have coffee and hang out and chit chat and do their correctives and roll out and talk about what they're going to do and plan a workout or get some feedback from the instructor that's there, do their barbell deadlifts programming if they're working on some absolute strength type stuff, or get sort of an endurance workout or whatever they need to do. But they're all from all the different levels, from our friend Mike Torres that we talked about, who's, just got his level 2 press in the bag, and is an incredible athlete, to, people who they have desk jobs and they're just there to work out, feel better and feel stronger. And everyone gets to train together doing whatever they're doing. But the goal is, because the foundation of the studio is built around the skilled practice of the strong first principles, everyone has a common language.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So 2 follow-up questions I have for you based on what you just shared there. So I have checked out your website. So could you share with the audience what's the standards are for that class? Like, do they go through a couple of weeks and then at the end of the month, they test those standards? And then also, is that sort of a very natural, I guess in a way, kind of Darwinianism of like natural selection of, people kind of figure out after a couple of weeks, like this is either I really like this, I'm getting into this, or this is not my cup of tea.
This is not my cup of tea. Right. Yeah. Well, it's simple, but it's not easy. Right. Mm-hmm. And as we all know, those of us who do kettlebell training, it's an inch wide, it's a mile deep, trying to perfect your swing. But our basic skills test for being able to do more in our studio is 5 deadlifts with a kettlebell, standing halos, 10 in each direction, a hardstyle plank for 30 seconds, goblet squats, 5 goblet squats, and then 5 sets of 10 swings with whatever appropriate rest in between, with an appropriate size bell for that person. And some people come in and in one class, they're ready to test through. The average is probably anywhere between 4 and 6 classes for most people. And like I said, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for safe and effective. Mm-hmm. That's what we're looking for. So, but we have had people that spent, we had one gentleman, bless his heart, who, 3 months to pass the skills test. He came in really not particularly fit, but just really ready and willing to put every effort into it. And he passed the skills test. It took him a while, but he did it. And why I programmed it that way is the deadlifts are for basic form. Can they hinge? Overhead halos in a narrow stance, basically feet together, is can they control their body with something overhead? And what kind of shoulder mobility do they have? I mean, it's not going to keep them from going further, but we're looking at if you're putting something over your head and waving it around, can you keep the rest of your body intact and solid? Then hardstyle plank is just in that position. Can you keep everything on? Can you keep your glutes on? Can you stay in that plank position for 30 seconds? And that's longer than you might train it, but it's just a skills test. Then goblet squats. Do you know the difference between a hinge and a squat? Can you squat? Can you grunt? Right. Can you do it the right way? And then 5 sets of 10 swings. And it's not like we're, standing back with a clipboard and our fingers on our chin going, did they get it? We're coaching them all the way along. But are they able to breathe in the biomechanical breathing match? Do they get a float? Are their arms connected to their body? Do they have a hinge or are they squatting? Do they get tight at the top? Do they have the appropriate amount of tension? So anybody can do that. My mom's 73. She can do it. You can pass the skills test. But that sets you up for the ability for then, because in our next group of classes, our 3 elements class, you're going to, we could have a class where you swing the bell 300 to 500 times in a class. So if they can't do 50 swings and stay safe, there's no way they're going to survive in the next classes. In fact, they'll hurt themselves. Right. And we don't want people just doing the movement to do the movement. Because in our studio, we'd rather have, even if the instructor says, give me 10 reps of this. If they only have 6 good ones and put it down, that's awesome. Right. We'll take it, But we need to know that they have the requisite amount of knowledge base. And then, yes, you're right. It is Darwinian. It weeds out people that are just coming for a beat down. Right.
But I like that too, because like you said, the mentality is a skill-based practice. Mm-hmm. So, you have to kind of take the mindset where, yes, you're training and you're getting this effect from the training, but there's also this incredible amount of learning going on mm-hmm. behind the eyes, so to speak. And
absolutely.
If you're not really, if you don't want to think about like how you're moving with a weight, mm-hmm. like it's not
right.
Like that to me is very interesting. Like I find that very engaging, and I can, I leave everything else in my life behind when I'm doing that.
Absolutely.
Right. And hopefully other people do too. But for some, they just want to pick up stuff and, throw it around. Right. Or
just, or they want to, or get enticed by random acts of variety just right. because it's exciting. And we all understand that. I mean, yeah, what isn't fun about whatever, bungee jumping or, whatever, blah, 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 whatever that might be. But I think that for life ableness and the skill set that you need to have longevity and durability, I think that training in this way gets you just the biggest bang for the buck, because it doesn't take really that long to get effects. We've had people come in for 1 or 2 weeks in just 2 classes a week and just say, oh my God, I can feel the difference already. This is amazing. And so whether you're training for some particular event or life, like maybe you're a firefighter or in the armed services or whatever, any of that kind of stuff, or an athlete, pro athlete, or if you're somebody who just wants to feel good in their body and feel strong and look good. That's why people train. A lot of people is because they will need to feel better. They're tired of feeling like crap. And who doesn't want to look better or feel better in their bodies? I think everybody does.
Yeah, totally. it's win-win all around. You feel better physically, mentally. You have a lot more confidence. Enhances all aspects of
Absolutely.
Life.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's really cool, and thank you for sharing the standards. And it was really cool to hear the tie-in between how that progresses them into the other classes, but also,
right.
I think that's a really good, first kind of check mark, that can win a lot of people over. Wow, because I
accomplished this thing.
Yes, and it can be
Absolutely.
very intimidating at the beginning.
It can be for some people. And, I organize my gym around the look of it, even to help embrace people who had bad experiences in the past with going into gyms or having a bad experience in PE back in the day, for example. And so people that really don't have a sports or fitness background can come in and feel very comfortable about being in this place. But yet we have all the toys, we have all the gear, and we probably have more kettlebells than any other location anywhere. It's ridiculous.
That's awesome.
I probably have over 300 bells on the floor of all different sizes. But people can come in and soon very quickly get over being intimidated by throwing around a piece of iron.
Right.
And really enjoying it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So question I have for you as a fellow instructor.
Yes.
So working with, say, a new student, and taking into considerations from functional movement systems and strong first. So if you're working with a student who their goal is fat loss and losing weight, is there special consideration that you need to take into account for somebody who may have additional body mass and they may not be able to get into the position, or it's difficult for them to get into the position to hike the bell off the floor or to deadlift?
Sure. Yeah. There's a couple of ways people come into our studio. Some come in just for group classes, and they're not really interested in personal training. And then some people come in with some very specific goals, and they really want just personal training. For the people that come in with very specific goals and are looking potentially for fat loss or whatever, we do an FMS screen on all of our personal training clients or students. I like the word student because I think being a student of strength and having that skill practice is important, but they're clients as well. So we just started calling them cludents. So at our studio, our cludents, if they do individual training or small group training, they all get screened. Okay. So that's going to give us some empirical data to also screen against in the future. We know what to keep them away from. We know what they need to work on. It's very, very clear. On the other hand, if they're coming for group classes, we use Ground Force Method is one of our other systems. It's a system partner with FMS and Strong First, and they have a warm-up protocol and an exploration. And it's not exactly an assessment, but you can use it as one and it's really easy to do that with group classes. And so we use the GFE, the Ground Force Exploration, with our group classes. That's how we warm up. That's how we warm down. So we get a really quick snapshot of people's work capacity, what they're able to do, what they're able not to do, what they're bringing to the table each day. So when you start in with somebody who has a lot of mass, is a little bulky, and they are having a hard time being able to get into a deadlift position or hike the bell off the floor, we can bring the bell up to them. We can change a deadlift to a suitcase deadlift and put boxes at their sides. We can have them swing a kettlebell on a strap or a towel swing, which allows them to have a wider grip, because a lot of times people that have a lot of mass in their torso aren't able, or they hinge too early because their arms hit their body. And that's sort of if you're doing a swing that's going to give you the best sort of stance for the hinge, your arms have to be way down, as we all know, near our hips before we hinge. You got to wait for that bell to descend, your arms to connect with your torso. But if you have so much mass, your arms connect really, really high, and that tells your brain, oh, it's time to hinge. But you actually have to go beyond that and around the mass to be able to hinge correctly. So we just widen them up by giving them a towel or a strap to use on the bell, and or having them do double bell swings really light, which allows them to have a wider stance. So there's lots of ways to help any of those types of body mechanic situations for people that have a lot of mass. And then the other thing that we do is, like I said before, if you got 2 good reps, 3 good reps, we'll take them. We've had people come in. I had one gentleman who is just one of our kettlebell family members now, who came in one day and just said, I don't know, he was quite overweight. And he said, I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, well, can you get up, sit down on the toilet and get back up again? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, you can do this. That's it. It's good. We got this. We got this covered, And so when he started in, he could only do maybe 3 or 4 swings before he would be so out of breath he'd have to walk the length of the studio. And so for us, it's not about 10 reps. It's about 10 single reps. We're going to look at 10 sets of 1. And so if he gets to 3 sets of 1 and he's got to go, or she's got to go walk for a little while to come back and stay with it, then that's what we do. And so there's regressions for movements, but there's also a clear progression, which is being able to reach the goal of that test, which is really wonderful to see people achieve. And then we have other tests for other classes. But for weight loss, people just have to move well without pain or discomfort, and then to add load as the skill practice goes up. And then they have to pay attention to what's going on outside the gym, because even if you're training 6 days a week or something like that, for most people, that's still only an hour. And there's lots of hours in the week that aren't accounted for, that if you don't change those other aspects of your life, you might see some benefit for sure. There's no doubt. But for weight loss and status change like that, you have to look at the big picture, which is, what are you putting in your mouth?
Right. Absolutely. Do you speak to your students about that? Like, try to educate them on just, balance between what you're doing in the training facility as well as outside of, making sure that they're taking care of their body and helping it
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we have a whole transformation challenge built around making changes in habits for the global well-being of your life, basically. So looking at not only the athletic pursuits for daily life, but trying to help people to build resilience, improve longevity, pay attention to if they're drinking enough water, are they getting enough rest, what kind of sleep they're getting, what are they putting in their body? Are your foods helping you or hindering you? Because even if you restrict calories, to be at a calorie deficit to lose weight, what you're eating might be inflammatory for your body. So it's still going to have problems. We have a lot of people that come with low-grade inflammation, with joint pain and everything like that. And in our transformation challenge, we basically put them on a anti-inflammatory diet, sort of Whole30 style, for 30 to 60 days. And it's amazing. Within 2 weeks, a lot of people that have joint pain, it's gone. And they're not as bloated as they were. And pretty soon, they're starting to clean up whatever mess has been going on, because you don't know, if you just eat whatever's in front of you and you enjoy it, and that's great. If you're not paying attention to sort of being your own chemist with things, if you don't pare it down to the basics and then start adding food back in to see what affects you, you're never going to know what or if any of the food groups that are out there might be affecting your system in a not positive way. So our transformation challenge is built around getting strong, moving well. The basis of it is moving well, or relearning healthy, pain-free movement for that foundation, and then putting strength and skilled practice on top of that. And then looking at all the other aspects so that you can, have fun and look better naked. It's all good.
Yeah, because everybody wants that.
Everybody wants that.
That's right.
Yep.
Awesome.
Whatever that looks like to you, it's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears. That was excellent. Thank you so much. That was phenomenal insight there. So you also, one of the topics I had down here, you did a research study with Dr. Craig Liebenson on improving thoracic mobility using the kettlebell halo.
Right. I helped write the article with him about how you can use the halo to integrate a couple things, like shoulders, torso, a core, and in some different stances to basically set up the foundation so that people can get better movement. And so whether that's thoracic or more integration with the spine and the torso, in a split stance, like a half kneeling stance or a bilateral, both knees down or standing, it really, I think the halo is a lot of people use it as a sort of like a warm up for their shoulders or sort of forget about it. But it's in almost every single Pavel book out there. And the FMS uses it in half kneeling stances and tall kneeling stances. And it's just such a great and simple exercise to add into any fitness and strength regime to help turn on all the stabilizers and reconnect things that might be turned off. And so if you get into a really good half kneeling stance, and that's a trick on its own, sort of all the reflexive stabilizers were turned on, and then you've got this thing, depending on the load, over your head that is sort of forcing your body to do the right things at the right time.
Right.
And so it's sort of like a self-correcting drill if you get it set up the right way, which is kind of nice.
Yes. So what's the backstory? What prompted you to do the collaboration with Dr. Liebenson? Was it just something like it started kind of very organically, like conversation, or did he reach out to you?
Let's see. He was in town for one of his presentations at a chiropractic, Northwest Chiro Rehab. And he comes and does a lot of presentations there, and I think I met him there, and we got, I think both Jeff Sokol and I met Craig around the same time, and he came in and did a session with me at my studio, and we started chatting and just had a lot of common, and said, oh, we should combine efforts and do something about kettlebells and movement and connectivity. And so we came up with the halo progressions, which is something that I had worked with him when he came into the studio. And we've since collaborated a couple times, and he asked me to write a chapter in his new edition of the Rehabilitation of the Spine, one of his the books, I guess, that he's written for chiropractic school. So it's quite an honor.
Wow.
To have done that. Yeah.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Exciting.
Yeah. So he's a pretty amazing guy.
Yes. What was the focus for the chapter, if you don't mind me asking?
Basically it's self-correcting drills for the hinge. And one of the things he has seen over the years, he said, was that people don't know what a hinge is in the chiropractic world.
Right.
And, things are changing because the model that he promotes is chiro rehab. So it's moving away from sort of the old school chiropractic traditions of, somebody comes into the office, gets an adjustment, and then leaves, right? This is more of, you may or may not get an adjustment. If it's necessary, you get an adjustment, but also they have a rehab component. So they know how to use, and because they're clinicians, they can push and pull and prod and activate and all these types of things to be able to see if they can get the movement patterns to allow the body to self-correct.
Right.
And then to do the chiropractic adjustment if necessary. So this particular rehab model is very popular in the Northwest. There's a lot of clinics, Northwest Chiro Specialists, we've got Kinetics, we've got, a bunch of different chiro rehab. It's really big here. And so there's a really nice relationship that happens between chiro rehab centers and studios like mine who specialize in movement coaching. Because what happens is I want to be able to, if I have somebody that comes in with an issue that we can't solve with swings and get-ups and deadlifts and the things that we do with the FMS screens and correctives and ground force method, we need to be able to refer them to somebody who understands movement.
Yes.
And isn't just going to go, oh, what? You do kettlebells? That's dangerous.
Yes.
That's still out there, And so we need to be assured that somebody that we refer to understands what we do and has the confidence to send people back to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this.
And vice versa. Mm-hmm.
So how do you try to identify those people? What do you look for? Are there questions you ask, or do you do a little investigative sleuthing and check them out in person for yourself?
Oh, you mean the
clinician.
chiropractors?
Yeah,
the clinician? Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go in and I'll meet somebody and sometimes they've heard of the studio through the grapevine, sometimes absolutely not. And if it's somebody who's near us or I've heard good things about, I'll go in and do a session with them. I'll go in and have them do a screen on me and do a whatever, work on my, whatever I've got working that I need worked on. Everybody needs something, And so, and it sort of do my own personal assessment of their professionalism and their skill base. And then do we have something in common? Do we understand movement the same way? And a lot of times it's like, yeah, this is a great fit. This is wonderful. So now I have someone responsible and responsive that I can refer people to and that I know is going to honor and respect the relationship and send them back to me to continue getting strong when they're ready to get stronger. And then the other nice thing is we've had a lot of those chiro clinicians, physical therapists and chiros send people to us because they know how we do things at Kettlebility. And all my instructors, we have this movement coaching, strength coaching foundation that we've built. And so we get a lot of referrals from clinicians because they know that if people are ready for that next stage and they want to do the next stage, if they send them somewhere that doesn't understand movement, they could just get broken again. That's right. Not assured, but it's a possibility and it's happened before. So they know if we have that relationship, that if they send someone to me and they say, oh, this is the person they're working on these types of things, I can tell our Kettlebility instructors, if they're in group classes or if they're going into personal training, this is what they're working on, and we can help support what that clinician has spent all that time and energy working with that person on. It's not lost.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah. And that's just, there's that mutual trust that goes both ways between, yourself and the clinician and vice versa. And it, the student wins out in the end because they're getting healthier and they're getting stronger and
absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. It's a win-win situation for sure. Awesome. For sure. And it's important for us too, I think, as trainers, scope of practice is, excuse me, going to become, I think, more important as time goes on. And more of our world comes down to you have to be certified in a particular way to do certain things. And so as an instructor and a trainer, we're not clinicians. We can't fix everything. There's a lot of things that can be fixed with basic, healthy, good movement that does not make pain happen. But if it does, and some people come with it, and sometimes it happens. It just happens. If you train, sometimes it's going to happen. So if you have someone to refer to that understands what we do, that's really important, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to shift gears one more time here.
Cool.
To a different topic. So, mutual friend, got to give a shout out to Mike Torres.
Yay, Mike.
Yeah, Mike. So, Mike just earned his level 2 Strong First Kettlebell certification. It is half body weight military press.
Yep.
So Mike and I had a chance to kind of talk offline last week, I think, or maybe the week before, but he had some great recommendations and said that some of the things that you were programming for him, he felt were tremendously helpful in hitting that. So I was wondering if you could kind of share some of your thoughts on some of the things foundationally that you feel are really important to a good press.
Absolutely. One is, it seems silly to say this, but how well do you press? Do you know your press groove? Whatever that might be for you. And it's different for everybody. It can be different on side to side. And a simple way to sort of find out what that is to do a bottoms up press. A bottoms up press will basically fix whatever issue you have in your press groove. You can't cheat it. Mm-hmm. And that will be, in my opinion, bottoms up press, probably the heaviest bell that you can bottoms up press will show you what your press groove is. Now, that being said, if you're doing a bottoms up press and underneath you're just falling apart and getting all wiggly, then that's not what we want. So foundationally, the next part is underneath what the bell is doing. Is your body solid into the ground, or is there some leakage somewhere in there? It could be torso, shoulder, core, pelvis, knees, feet, could be any of those things. So what component of that isn't holding together? And then it might hold together for something light, but once you start going heavier, things start pulling apart. Or sometimes it's a little bit of a head trip. Oh, darn it. Probably people use the other word, but oh crap, here we go. I got to do this thing, and here I go, and then they just try to blow it up and everything falls apart underneath because they're not able to grind through things. And presses are called a grind for a very good reason. I've seen people spend 10 to 15 seconds getting through a sticking point, but the foundation underneath doesn't change. The status of their body being locked, solid, rooted in the ground, like a column, doesn't change, even though they're grinding, pushing. It doesn't even look like the bell is moving, but it doesn't go down. It just continues to slowly go up in through that. So everyone's got that sticking point. So, and there's a lot of, I think, trepidation and fear, I think, that also is part of max press for some people. Because once they hit that sticking point, they freak out. Oh, I can't get it. Oh, I didn't get it again. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get it, whatever. And so they're neurologically setting this neural pathway to sort of give up and fail once they hit something tricky and hard. Some of us are naturally strong enough to be able to throw a lot of stuff over our head, but when it gets hard, meaning max rep, they haven't earned that column underneath well enough. The stacking of the body, the connectivity of all the torso and, everything rooting in the ground, they haven't learned how to grind. For some of us, like myself, heavy's hard. And so if I'm not solid underneath, I'm not going to get the bell up. So I had to learn to grind early, and it helped me teach other people how to sort of set the system for underneath. So the next part would be, I think what you're asking, is how do you help the body learn how to stay solid when it gets heavy up top?
Yes.
Because I think you're going for your max press too, right?
I am. I'm training for the SFG level 2. Be attending, I believe it's September 23rd, 24th, for Saturday, Sunday in King of Prussia with
awesome.
Yeah, Master Phil Scarito.
Great. Feels great. No, that'll be a good start. One of the things that I think is important is being able to do heavier than your press bell, and even quite heavier than your press bell, holding it overhead. And one of the things I saw, was lucky enough to actually see Gray present in person a long time ago, was a very simple protocol, which I love, and we do all the time at the studio because the payback is so good, is using the Turkish Getup, just a portion of it, to help the body to have work capacity and time under tension with load overhead. And you can basically, the protocol is a 10-minute protocol, and you start with any bell size that seems appropriate. And you roll to press, you come up to the elbow. So when you're at the elbow position, you basically do 10-second holds there. Then you come up to the hand position, the tall sit, and you do a 10-second hold. Then you go back down to the elbow and 10-second hold. And then you bring it down to the ground, switch sides, and repeat on the other side. And you don't stop for 10 minutes. The goal is to be able to do, at least 8 kilograms heavier than your press bell with that protocol. Now, I think that might just be a 48 for you, but that's what you're going to want to own with that. It makes you feel real comfortable with a bell that size over your head and carrying that load. And there's a lot of work capacity that goes in, so you probably won't start there. I'd just start with, for you, start with a 24. If that's easy for the first 10 minutes that you do, a couple days later, do it the next size up, go up 4 kilograms, and just keep going up the chain.
Okay. Cool.
And as you're, bumping up 4 kilograms at a time, I wouldn't do less than that. It might be that, let's say you're moving from a 32 to a 36. You might do a 32 right left, the next rep do a 36 right left, and then go back down to a 32. So sort of stair step it, yeah. And sort of like for a couple of sessions for the 10 minutes, maybe a couple of sets with the 36, a couple of reps with the 36, and then going back to the 32, so that you're able to continue doing the workload all the way through. And then eventually you'll be able to work up into it. But I've seen this protocol not only help people get their press, but also help get one arm, one leg push-up.
Oh, cool.
Because the connection with the shoulders into the torso is so strong. It's really a nice thing. It's simple, and it's easy to do. You can do it every day. So it's kind of a nice thing. So that's one of the protocols that I use for almost everything, but especially for pressing, because it gets you used to having that load overhead. And especially if you're using a heavier load than you're pressing, it makes you feel a lot more confident about being able to control something that heavy.
So would you do that before the main pressing in the session, like at the end, or would you do that like?
I would probably do that either after or separated by many hours, or on a different day. Okay. On a different day. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I got to imagine that's pretty, even though you're just doing the first 3 transitions in the Turkish, it's pretty neural.
Yeah. It is. Absolutely. I mean, I would match that with, if you have a training day that isn't going to be involving too much pressing, I would put that on a non-pressing day, perhaps. And the second thing that you would do after that would be really heavy swings, for example, top of the minute, or something like this other thing I like to have my people do that are going for max press is being able to, work up to, once again, doing something a bit heavier than their press bell, which would be clean, swing, clean, squat. Okay. So maybe 3 swings, 2 cleans, a squat, or reverse. 1 swing, 2 cleans, 3 squats on one side, single arm, with a really heavy bell. And what I'm finding is that, let's say you're trying to get a 36 press, and really you only have a 28 or a 32, and you think you're close to a 36. But once you get the 36 into the rack, it doesn't go anywhere. What I'm finding is that even people doing this protocol with the 36, their press bell, they're not able to hold the bell with integrity while they're going through that. So once they get the swing, they do 2 cleans, they start the squat, the bell's pulling off the body in the squat. It's because that connection of the shoulder and the torso and that sort of interconnected stability isn't there to hold that bell on the front squat. Front squats are hard. Single bell front squats are really hard, and you're torquing your body a bunch of ways. And so just earning the work capacity and the ability to hold, let's say if you're going for a 36 press, being able to hold a 40 or a 44 to do that protocol is going to make the 36 be much more manageable in the end. So yeah, you still got to press. You still have to work on, slow negatives with your press weight, or even heavier. You have to work on, pressing submax bells for skill practice and just volume. And you have to work on pressing. If you're going to press, you got to press. But too much pressing can also blow it out on the other end. So being able to work on the stabilization of the whole system underneath the press, which is what feeds the press, I think is super important.
Awesome. That was fantastic. I took a bunch of notes here. So
cool. Hopefully it'll help you.
I was just channeling my inner Neo from the Matrix and just kind of downloading all that information right now. So it was great. It was fantastic.
Cool.
Okay, final topic we have before rapid fire. So you've mentioned it a couple times. But you're the North American Director for Ground Force Method, which is a partner to Functional Movement Systems Strong First.
Yes.
So please provide overview of what is Ground Force Method for those that are not familiar with it. And then also kind of how that kind of integrates into what you do at Kettlebility.
Sure. Ground Force Method used to be called Primal Move. Primal Move, we rebranded as Ground Force Method. And in my opinion, it's one of the best ways to stay healthy and mobile. It's a great tool for people, users of whatever methodology that you have, whatever strength component you're working on or skilled athleticism. It's a great tool for prehab and rehab. It's also a really good full body mobility practice. And it is also a great progressive strength body weight training system, sort of all in one. So it's sort of like, how we always talk about the kettlebell as being your one-stop shop. Well, I think GFM is kind of your one-stop shop for that other component that helps support what we do when we're doing strength stuff. And it supports and correlates with FMS screening tests and correctives. Our system is built on integration with FMS correctives. Sometimes correctives can be I think FMS is working really hard to move away from that, but some of it is just the animal that it is. And anybody who's gone to physical therapy and comes back with a bunch of physical therapy drills, sometimes they get boring and we don't do them. And so as an instructor, as a coach, how do we get our people to do the things that they ought to be doing that are going to help prep their system and or fix things that aren't working as well as they should? And GFM can be integrated into that because the movement flows and the patterns, we have some specific patterns that correlate directly to the FMS movement correctives. And that's one of the things that FMS really likes, is that it's kind of seamless. This is that portion of the next step that FMS doesn't have, right? It's all about setting the screen and the standards for what do you need to stay away from, what do you need to work on, and then fix it. But then what do you do? Okay, so we do kettlebells. FMS is like, yeah, do strong first, do kettlebells, do hardstyle for strength stuff. But then what about that other component, which is moving well, And so this is that other part of it. And the nice thing is it can be integrated with any kind of training, whether you're a power lifter or a basketball, tennis, soccer athlete, you love CrossFit, love doing, whatever you need, TAC fit, you're into whatever that stuff, whatever you like to do. It's a nice way because you can use it at home. You don't need anything. If you're at the dojo, a lot of we're also a system partner with KMG, so Krav Maga Global. Oh, very cool. A lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Gracie family, they all like this stuff because the buy-in is quick because it's fun. You get to do flows that, make you move better, make you feel better. You look like a ninja, it brings, not only is it restoring lost movement patterns, if that's what needs to happen, or helping you fill in things that are missing because you're so particular in the way you train that you're not training other things, right? So you get real sort of closed into a movement pattern. And it also brings just a playfulness back into movement that I think that is lost sometimes. So that's kind of what Ground Force Method is all about.
That's cool. It sounds like a very good glue to tie everything together there between.
Yeah, I think
FMS
so.
And strong first. Plus,
yeah.
I like the getting people to move more, but also keeping it very, very fun.
Right.
Because I think it's important, while you want to address some of the deficiencies that may show up on an FMS screen. Mm-hmm. I know there's been times where I'm like, well, you may have some homework, and people kind of look at you and you're like, you get this look on their face like, what? Yeah, what are we doing here? So being able to keep it fun, but also still address some of those things that show up in the screen is great.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because you asked, how do we integrate this at the studio, or what have I seen? And, when we started doing this, the GFE, the Ground Force Exploration, which is basically a flow series that hits, ankle mobility, hip mobility, thoracic mobility, a little bit of vision in there, a little bit of vestibular work, a lot of sensory integration type stuff, crawling, core stabilization, kind of hits everything in 5 to 8 minutes. We started doing that at my studio, 4 or 5 years ago. And in the beginning, people were like, what do you mean crawling on the ground, type of stuff. And now everybody's crawling, right? But the nice thing is I was able to do some screens pre and post, just instituting just the GFE as our warm up and cool down at the studio. And people's screens got better just by doing the GFE. And if you're familiar with the FMS, you will see some of the FMS movement patterns in the GFE. And so just by doing that, people have changed their foundational and fundamental movement patterns, which is pretty cool. Of course, it can get much more precise than that. But the other nice thing about GFM is that it's very scalable. If you have somebody that can't do something because they've had a hip replacement or they have an injury or whatever, it's scalable from the absolute basic movement all the way up to the bright, shiny, cool stuff, ninja stuff, Mm-hmm. But what I've found is that the benefit of the GFM system is in the real fundamental basic movement patterns that we have and owning that. So I kind of call that movement literacy. You know,
I like
if
that.
if you're crawling and you're all wiggly wobbly and, you know, your gait pattern is off in the crawling, so you're like ipsilateral, so left arm and left leg is moving at the same time and, you know, stuff, then your literacy for that thing is not there. You have to break down the components to teach the literacy of that movement pattern. Or if you're sitting in one of our seated positions called figure 4, if you're transitioning between that and something else, if that movement literacy for owning the connectivity of the shoulder to the torso, being able to have the hip mobility to make the switch, you know, all those types of things, if you don't own it slowly, if you don't own that precise movement pattern, then you can't do it fast, or you haven't earned the right to do it fast yet. Because if you just gloss over things, just like somebody who's learning a kettlebell swing and they're, yeah, I got that, but they're hinging too early or they're coming out of the hole too fast. You know, eventually what'll happen is that not efficient or correct or skilled movement pattern will build into a higher order issue, which keeps them from being able to progress or break. Right. And so what I found is that the most simple of movements in GFM are the ones that have the biggest payback, especially for people that are, you know, really looking at restoring lost movement patterns, or on the other side of it, high-level athletes who are looking to have performance enhancement. So both ends of the spectrum and in the middle benefit from really owning their movement literacy. It's pretty cool.
Very nice. Awesome. I will be checking that out a little bit more.
Cool.
Anything else that you would like to add before we move into rapid fire?
Oh boy, that sounds a little scary. No, I don't think so. Question mark. No. I just really appreciate being on the show. It's really great. It's been really fun to finally get to talk with you. So it's good.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm having a blast. This is great. I mean, I got a bunch of notes here, stuff that I'll be using. So
perfect.
Yeah, and I know that other people will be looking forward to and listening this, and will get a lot of value out of it as well.
I hope so. I hope so.
Definitely. All right, here we go. First question.
Okay.
So, Andrea, given all of your knowledge and experience at this point in your life that you've accumulated, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself 15 years ago?
Well, 15 years ago, I would say you need to start moving better and moving more.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah. And simple.
If you had to pick one, what's your favorite strength training exercise?
Oh, that's so unfair. That is so unfair. Well, I'm going to put them together. Swings and get-ups. All right, there you go.
There we go. Simple and sinister. I love it. How has your training changed today, present day, compared to 15 years ago?
Well, 15 years ago, I was doing big box machines and thinking that the whole, you know, curls on the curl machine thing was cool, you know. So I think it's changed a lot. And when I was doing athletics, I mean, we didn't strength train. There was no such thing. There was no such thing as cross training. It was like, you're playing soccer, just run more, run faster. How do you run faster? Just run faster. You know, that's the kind of coaching we got. So, for me, it's changed a lot. It's gone from sort of that big box, just trying to look strong, to actually functionally being strong, which I think is a big difference. And that's not to take away from anybody who does, you know, works on the physicality of their bodies, like bodybuilders, because they're strong too. Trust me, they're strong. But in terms of functional strength for life, that's what it's changed into. Do you have the longevity? Do you have the durability? Do you have the capacity to do what you want to do when you want to do it? That's what I train for now. In our system, the Strong First system, Ground Force Method, FMS, a lot of the other systems that I use, all create that foundation for that goal.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's what it's about right there. Being able to be healthy and resilient all the way through as we continue to hopefully age gracefully.
Right. And then taking on special goals. I mean, you want to do this event or do this crazy lift or do this wonderful thing, then yeah, train for it. But if you don't have that base set up, then that's going to be really hard to do. Yes. And not get broken in the process, for sure.
Yes. Have you ever had an injury? And if so, how did that affect your training in your life? I played a lot of club competitive tennis. So I played USTA tennis, competitive adult tennis for 10 plus years. And in the process, I destroyed my right shoulder. Actually, one of the reasons I started kettlebells was to fix my shoulder so that I could stupidly play more tennis, So, and it did. It rehabbed my shoulder, but what I didn't know at the time was that my shoulder had been completely destroyed. And so I was rehabbing a faulty mechanical system. And actually that speaks to the genius of Pavel's system, because you're learning to connect your shoulder to your torso and using your lat and your pec, and not using other things to push from. Mm-hmm. I got really, really strong. I mean, I could press the 20 kilogram and I could do snatches, the 20 and 24, and do get-ups with all those big heavy weights and swing heavy and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I had a real problem was pull-ups, which I should have been strong enough to do. I could pull from like a prone position, like a push-up position, like renegade rows, no problem. But once I got overhead, I sort of felt like my shoulder was going to pop out of the joint. So I just didn't train overhead pulls. I could do an overhead pull, meaning a negative press, because the weight of the bell and the stabilization of whatever going on underneath was able to hold everything solid. But anytime I threw something or went back and played tennis, my shoulder would be in pain and destroyed. Generally speaking, it was absolutely fine. So finally, I had gone to do sort of an athletic coaching course and threw something and hurt my shoulder again. Same old feeling after playing tennis. And I started talking to like Brett Jones and I talked to Pavel about it, and talked to Eric Cobb of Z Health, and they were just like, hey, why don't you go get diagnostics? Finally. I mean, I had been to physical therapists, I had been to massage, acupuncture, actually went to see an ortho, and everyone was like, oh, you're so strong, you're not in pain. It's probably just a labral tear. You should be able to do PT. And finally, after all the years, Pavel actually pinpointed, he said, for someone who trains like you do, this area of your back is missing musculature. And he just saw it at an instant. And I said, okay. He goes, so when you go in and see your orthopedic specialist, ask him about that. So I went and got the MRI, and it turns out my shoulder was pretty destroyed. I had a high-grade partial tear in the front, a full-grade tears to the supra and infraspinatus. So I had no rotator cuff, basically. I had a chondral lesion on the glenoid fossa. I had a type 2 acromion. I had 2 labral tears. The orthopedic surgeon, who is Dr. Calfan, who is the Seahawks, all the professional game sports teams orthopedic specialist here in Seattle, said, I've never seen a shoulder so destroyed as yours and not have you be in pain, right? I was still training. I was doing handstands. I was doing, I wasn't in pain, but I had certain components of the strength test that were a little iffy, right? I could cheat through it. We call that compensation, right?
And in this way, compensation wasn't bad. It was keeping me safe and allowing me to be strong, but there was still something wrong. And it wasn't until I did the MRI that we saw how bad it was. So then I had a choice. I had a choice of, fixing it. And I had one chance to fix it or to leave it as is. Relatively strong. But one of the things my doctor did say was that if I injured it again, there probably wasn't enough tissue to repair. So I kind of just bit the bullet and was like, all right, I'm going to get it done. So I had shoulder surgery about 3 years ago. Am I still there?
Yeah,
that was so weird.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Out twice.
All right. So had the shoulder surgery 3 years ago, rehabbed it really, really carefully. And ground force method was a huge component of me rehabbing my shoulder. And I recovered really fast, and with full recovery, pressing, pushing, doing handstands, crawling, stronger than it ever was. I mean, the truth is I never trained without the injury because I started kettlebells and my shoulder was already destroyed. I just didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm stronger and more integrated now. And it's interesting because, my rotator cuff wasn't there, right? I mean, it was there just because I can compensate using my pec and my lat to stabilize my shoulder. But when I would do unilateral, so when I would do front squats just on the right side, my body would twist because there was nothing holding in the back. So I had some compensations under load in specific ways. Bilateral, double front squats, no problem. Bottoms up front squats, even better. But single arm front squats, I would have a twist. The whole underneath component, my knee would valgus collapse. I tried hard to fight against it, but when you go really heavy, some of those things just happen because there was nothing holding it together. So I've restored some movement inefficiencies or deficiencies because I had my shoulder repaired. So that was my big one. Wow. And I'm pleased to say that I would, getting diagnostics done just to know what's going on is smart because no one got this. Nobody. Right. Because we train for strength and we train in an intelligent way that actually creates some really nice compensations that make you appear that you're stronger or more together than you might be, which is, I don't know, good and bad at the same time.
Well, I'm glad to hear that everything is doing great now, and you've
absolutely
made some fantastic progress on that.
Yeah, pretty pleased. Very happy about it.
Excellent. Yeah. What is one thing that junior athletes, like high school, 14 to 18, should be doing more of to complement their training and their health?
For junior athletes, I think the tendency nowadays is to specialize really early. And so the simple thing would be to play a different sport, a sport that does things that your sport doesn't do. So if you play basketball, pick up soccer, for example, that type of thing. In the quote unquote old days, nobody specialized until they were in high school. So everybody played different sports for every season. It doesn't happen anymore. People specialize really, really early because people want that talent of that, high producer to come out early, potentially. Right. And so I guess what I would say is if you aren't able to play a different sport, then you need to really get into cross training of some type that is going to get you to move better, to complete the circle with the other movement patterns that your sport doesn't specialize in, because that will create better performance enhancement for the sport that you're in. Right. I do it simply for my junior athletes by teaching them swings, get-ups, and squats, and we do a lot of ground force method, just a ton of it, and it makes a huge difference.
Excellent. What's your best tip to improve recovery post-training session?
Take a nap.
There you go. Sleep.
Drink water, take a nap. Absolutely.
Next question. What's your favorite meal?
Oh, fatty pork.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm half Chinese. raised Chinese style. So we love pork and big old pork shoulder stewed for like ever. My great auntie style, red cooked fat shoulder yumminess. I'm all about it.
Sounds good. That sounds really good. Awesome. We got 2 more questions.
Okay.
What's one book everyone should read?
Let me think about that. The Body Has a Mind of Its Own. I think it's by Blakesley.
Okay.
And it really talks about neuroplasticity and how the brain drives everything. I think it's a really good one.
Cool. I'm jotting that down.
Cool.
Final question. Who do you study or have you studied in your career to improve and get better? And that could be multiple people. It doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah. Started with Pavel Tsatsouline, and then I got involved in FMS, so Greg Quickly Burton. Then I got involved a little bit with Z Health, did all their courses. I think Eric Cobb is a great facilitator of just a good brain for a bunch of stuff. I did Training for Warriors. I think he's got the most amazing coaching capacity as an inspiring component for anybody who wants to work with other people. I think he's amazing. And I've just read a lot of books, like the one I told you about. It's always a huge curiosity for me. You know, Craig Liebenson, got to work with him. That's been just a great joy. And I guess, but mostly learning from the people I coach, my students and my co-instructors at the studio. You know, being able to have the opportunity to teach at Strong First certifications and GFM certifications, because you learn so much from teaching. And getting the feedback when you're teaching, hearing other people teach. So I think that is probably, those are the things that feed me, I think, the most.
Excellent. That's awesome. Well, Andrea, that takes us through to the kind of conclusion of the interview. So this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been really fun, really cool. Great questions. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a tremendous amount, and I know others will too. So just hang on the line. Let me give you a proper goodbye off air.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.